Nobody has any rotten potatoes or apples or baseball teams, right? I don't want to get hit by anything. In the blood type section in this PowerPoint, I rearranged some slides so that it flows better. But they haven't been changed, they've just been rearranged. You'll see, I'll show you how they've been done. When I put that in there, I inserted that. I usually do that in lab. I inserted it at the last minute, and you realize how bad the flow of those slides was. So kind of made them better, I hope. Continuing on with RBC production, what we call erythropoiesis. We mentioned that last time. Really, for any particular formed element, all you need to do is put the first part of the word and poiesis behind it, and that's the developmental part of it. Where does erythropoiesis only occur?
Metabosis.
Yep. Oh, this is I need that sign again. I never seem to be able to remember. I drank it. I can bring my shirt and pants, but they were rolling. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Something I did there. I'm not going to try to pull it down. I was trying to thicken up the writing, but somehow I got nervous on you too. That's not me, that's the pen. We'll just say red marrow, you know it's in the bones, of course. Now the stem cell, the ultimate stem cell for blood formation we have covered already. It's up on the screen there, the hemocytoblasts, and they produce all the blood cells. And then we have, as you know already, two subcategories of those stem cells, the myeloids and the lymphoids. And what makes it somewhat easier to remember is that the only cells produced by lymphoid stems would ultimately be lymphocytes, lymphocytic whites. The rest, reds, most of the whites, platelets are all produced by myeloid stem cells. So that makes it fairly easy to remember, I think. The names aren't easy, but what produces what would be, I think. By the way, I've been pretty much tied to this podium, which I hate. I like to walk around outside. I'm kidding. I like to walk around, and so I'm trying this new thing that I've seen professors using. You carry this pad with you and write, and it writes on the screen. I've learned how to use it, but I'm going to train myself. If I brought it in here today, I wouldn't have really been, that sure of myself. So eventually I will. But for right now, I have to be stuck here, clicking with this thing because nothing else seems to work. So red bone marrow, stem cells, myeloid, lymphoid. Myeloid is where we're going with the reds, of course. That's going to be their what they produce. And not clear, obviously. Now, hematologists, you've heard that term, I'm sure. A hematologist is generally a physician who specializes in blood diseases and so on, but anybody who studies blood would be described as that. And they've given name to each stage of blood cell formation. It doesn't matter if it's reds or whites or whatever. We're looking here, of course, in general at these stages for reds. And it starts with, remember red blood cells, mature red blood cells in your blood, these little discs with the sunken middles and so on. You've seen them in pictures, you've seen them in lab somewhat, anyway, slides. They have no nucleus, they're lacking a lot of their organelles and so on. But they all start with regular nucleated cells that lie within the bone marrow. And what stem cells produce these reds, like most of the rest of the cells? What would I write? Yeah, I would say myeloid. God, this is crazy. Myeloid stem cells. Myeloid stem cells would be the type. And once again, they produce they do produce most of the whites and platelets as well with their stages. Don't worry, it'll come back eventually. I guess it won't. I don't know what it's doing anyway. There, it comes back. Erythro. This is not going to work. I did something to correct it. Erythroblasts are what the myeloid stem cells convert to. And this is still an oversimplification of what is going on in there, but basically the myeloids convert into erythroblasts. Now if you analyze that word, it means red forming. So these are the red blood cell forming cells of the marrow, and they create a lot of things, but the main chemical that they are able to produce, and you know what I'm going to say, it starts with an H, hemoglobin. Now they can produce hemoglobin, whereas a mature red blood cell cannot. Can anybody answer why? Yeah, in order to make protein, or at least the polypeptides that make the protein, in order to code for those, you have to have a nucleus with DNA in it, genetic code, or you can't make protein. And so with losing the nucleus, a mature red blood cell is finished making whatever hemoglobin, so to speak, that was supposed to be there. But it's the cells before that that create it, particularly the erythroblasts. They are the ones that are busiest making this very important chemical, of course. Hemoglobin.
Mr. Wilson? What did you say the red blood cells come out made again?
Hemoglobin. The stuff I wrote down there. And I'm sorry this thing's convulsing me. I don't know what in the world is happening to it. But if you can not pay attention to that, probably something I did. I'm going to try that tablet. That thing does not do this, but it's... The above cells then shed their nucleus before they leave the blood, and they become cells that are called, there may be a few of these in a blood smear, but not too many. They become cells called reticulocytes. That's a CY there. One comes back. Reticulocytes are the cells that have lost their nucleus. They then enter the blood as developing the erythrocytes or red blood cells. Remember, the technical name for an RBC is the erythrocyte, which means what? How do you translate that? Red cell. The root erythric means a lot of things, but erythro in this case refers to red cell. We just asked this question, can you answer it again? Why are RBCs unable to make protein or reproduce? No nucleus. They shed it, and they became these reticulocytes. Well, the beauty is that we can get off this page eventually and look at the animation on the next page. In our bone marrow, we have cells that look similar to this. And from day 1 to 4, it takes about a week to develop a red blood cell from the beginning. And that's one line of cells. Of course, there's so many of them reproducing in there that we produce 2 to 3 million per second in our blood, depending on the amount we're producing. But one line of cells takes about a week. And the first type of cell will be an erythroblast. That will be that one. Then look what happens. The erythroblast sheds its nucleus, ejects it, and becomes this cell right here. Does that look a little different? Yeah, because it's lost its nucleus. It's lost most of its organelles. It may still make a little bit of hemoglobin, but not much. Some of these will show up in the blood. In fact, you may, if you look real closely, may see one in one of the bloods, or I should say, may have seen one, because you're not going to be looking at those slides that closely anymore unless you get one and look at it. And you may have seen some of these in there. Not too many of them. And they will change or morph. They don't divide anymore, of course, because they've lost their nucleus. These guys can't reproduce. But they will change into red blood cells. They look like this. As you can see there, it takes about 7 days or a week to do this. It's ongoing continually in all your red bone marrow, so it's a very fast process. And for so many cells are dying, so many are being reproduced to maintain equilibrium. As we said before, if you either have a disease or a problem which causes this, or you go into a higher altitude environment, your bone marrow will speed up the manufacture, producing of red blood cells, and you will develop more of them because of that. It's like a population growth. If more individuals are being born and die, then the population increases. So that's what would happen in a low O2 environment. Various diseases too can cause diseases of the bone marrow, liver, and other organs, kidneys and things like that. The kidneys have a good deal to say about how many RBCs are being produced. And I like the animation because this says basically what all that verbiage before with all the nervous writing said. I'm going to go back to the width thing. See if clicking on that makes any difference. I don't know what in the world happened. But you understand this diagram. There's one in the book, but I have simplified it, made it shorter. You don't need all those different erythroblastic stages there. Like proerythroblast and all the different erythroblasts, and then it goes to reticulocyte. This is a shortened version, which I think is plenty for us to follow. Now, it's important before we finish this discussion of RBC formation is to learn that a hormone can actually stimulate blood cell formation. That hormone is called erythropoietin, as you can see up here. EPO for the abbreviation for it. And it's secreted when something happens. And here we go back to our nervous pen again. See what happens here. It's secreted when what happens? And as you said, the proper term for hypoxia, low O2 is hypoxia. Kidneys will then sense this. Amazing, the kidneys have this ability to release this hormone when the oxygen level is coming through and increase. You'll find the kidneys do a number of things related to their functions. This is one of them. There is a medical or drug form of EPO that can be administered to a person to stimulate RBCs. And their O2 level happens up here. Anemic, their O2 levels are low. If they're candidates for it, you can give them this very expensive drug called, anybody?
Procrit.
You said it. Maybe a different name for it, but Procrit is the one that I know. example, I have a 97-year-old father-in-law who has kidney problems, and apparently, because of that, he cannot produce enough RBCs, and he's not kicking out enough EPO. So each month they give him a ProCrit shot, and it tends to help him maintain a livable level of red blood cells, RBCs. Well, let's go ahead to, if it's going to work for us now, go ahead to these practice questions and take a look at them. Do I need to write everything down here? And do I need to clear it? Yes, I do. Figure out that, John. Do you remember how biliverdin is formed? Yeah, whenever red blood cells are destroyed by the phagocytes of the spleen and liver and so on, the hemoglobin is broken down to heme, the iron-containing part, and the globin. The globin is digested to amino acids, recycled to the Greek. Then the iron is released from the heme, and that's where biliverdin comes from. It's the green substance produced by the release of iron from the heme. It's what's left over from the heme once the iron leaves that particular chemical. Where are old RBCs destroyed in the body? Liver, spleen are the two major areas. In the case where there are resident phagocytes that can consume these RBCs. RBCs live approximately, how long? 100 to 120 days, and they're ready to die. Some of them actually disintegrate or break apart within the blood. The majority of them are consumed by phagocytes in the liver and spleen. Now, urobilins and stercobilins come indirectly from chemical. Yeah, let me get my nervous writer here again. Indirectly from bilirubin. Just went over this one. Bone marrow cells make hemoglobin. Erythroblasts. I wonder if this is a font. Are we having fonts yet? Now, this is a question that's a little deeper to, an analytical type question. Reading that question, what's your answer to it? Is this totally passed around? Did everybody sign this?
I can come down later and get it.
I'll just mark it. So everybody else got it, right? Can you explain why that is the case?
Because we recycle the
You need
RBCs.
26 milligrams, yet only about 2 milligrams are required in your diet.
It's from recycling the hemoglobin.
Recycling, yes. You store some of the iron that you already had in hemoglobin. Remember, when the heme is digested or broken apart, the iron then is transferred to storage proteins. Hemosiderin and ferritin is stored that way. So you can then reuse it. It can be taken by transfer into the bone marrow. Recycled is the key. But you can't keep all your iron, so you have to have some added in your diet, or you'd run out. And surely you wouldn't have enough to make your. So that's the key thing here, is that you recycle it. I tell you, it's something new every day when you come in this place. A little bit better, not much. I learned to leave things alone. Any questions about the questions before I move on? Yes.
Could you explain why you can't refer to hemoglobin?